So let's begin by doing a naturalistic induction or naturalistic experience to begin with. We reiterate from yesterday that we can utilize the person's experience to guide them as an invitation into a state of trance or a different state of awareness, however you want to put it. So I want you to think of a situation or a time or a place where you felt calm and peaceful. Can you think of a time where you felt calm and at peace? And perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just breathe in naturally and normally. And as you breathe in naturally and normally, just notice any sensations in the body. And as you notice any sensations in the body, perhaps you notice your heartbeat, become aware of your breathing, and just go back to that time, place. It may be a vacation, perhaps it's a holiday, perhaps it's just a nice, cozy, warm Sunday afternoon with friends and family in your lounge room, the fire in the background, just feeling peaceful. And many activities that we do throughout the day can have hypnotic qualities. Perhaps we watch the sun go up or the sun go down, or we're driving along on the countryside, or perhaps we're on vacation at a beach and we watch the waves go in and out, or we look at the sky, or we're just absorbed in a certain situation we really enjoy doing. So you could be watching a program on TV, reading a book, and sometimes we read a book and it feels like time has just stopped, and before we notice, an hour's gone by, and it feels like 5 minutes. And just take a moment to reflect on certain experiences. When you felt calm and peace, what you see, what you heard, what you felt, any smells, any taste. And as you do that, in your own time, in your own pace, just come back to the here and now. Okay. And as you come back to the here and now, okay, just become aware of sensations. And so it's an invitation to trance. The sun beating down on my back there, I feel like a warm summer's day. I almost feel like I'm at a beach at the moment. The temperature's gone up slightly in the heating as well. So we want to we talked about the invitation rather than the inducing someone. The language of hypnosis where the conventional inducing somebody, you will go under the conventional. And there's nothing wrong with conventional. I've done a lot of learning around conventional hypnosis and traditional hypnosis, and it's useful. However, what works for one person might not work for somebody else. So that naturalistic induction, the invitation in the verse to thee, you will go under. When I count backwards, which is sort of conventional, traditional way of people's understanding of hypnosis, is useful. Some people say it's 15-20% useful, or significantly less useful than guiding someone through their own perceptions of reality. How they quantify that is up to them. But equally, one could say if we can tailor the approach for the individual, it's going to be far more useful than we think, because you've got your own reality. Because you might not enjoy going to the beach, you might not enjoy going to the countryside, and doing an induction with someone going somewhere where they don't enjoy going is probably not a good idea. So the idea is really for them to sort of create their own state. So if you enjoy walking in the countryside in Derbyshire, or you enjoy being at home on a Sunday afternoon with your family, if you enjoy being away in Thailand by the beach, we can create those elements of sensory perception in the induction itself to guide and invite the person to a different state of awareness. And we talked yesterday about that alpha state, of awareness, that theta state. So get into that sort of state where we have those epiphanies. A bit like when you're doing a dissertation or you're introspecting and you're having a bath and the answers just come out of nowhere, or you get up in the morning when you're sort of just coming around, the mind's chattering on. You have these sort of moments when you're really calm. That's quite useful. And we look at language now. So language is a meta map, a map of internal maps and models. We talked about the evolution of the brain throughout the course. We begin with a spine, a brainstem, a hypothalamus, a limbic system, a frontal cortex, and this evolutionary process. Now, language is new in the big scheme of things, evolutionary. When we think about the spine and things get more complex, and the brainstem controls the vital organs, the hypothalamus controls reproduction, food, water. Things get more complex, then the limbic system, emotion, aversion. Then we have this neocortex, what you could argue makes us human and separates us from where animals are still pretty much where they were many, many years ago. We've sort of moved on with these structures. And so language is useful because it's an internal map and model, but it's also subject to change. The language people use is a reflection of their maps and models of reality and reveals aspects of their models of reality the person's not even aware of. We talked about that, the narrative. People will tell you what they need to know. What people will tell you, you'll know what they say. It's like the narrative, the story they tell you. If you sort of hang back and metaphorically take the mirror out of your face and just hang back and let them speak, they will tell you what's going on. The narrative that they live by. And in this, we sort of look at the CBT world, there's a concept of cognitive distortions. Someone's story will tell you their cognitive distortions. You'll unravel the distortions cognitively through what they say. So, the distortions being the emotional reasoning, the magnification. The story will tell you that. It'll tell you all you need to know. When their models change, the experience of reality changes language. So language is a lever for changing those models and thus changing one's reality. So the story you tell yourself is your narrative, your perception. We talked about yesterday how memory is not reliable. It's just your perception. You've all been away on holiday. You've all been at family gatherings. You've all been in certain situations where you've experienced one thing and the other person has seen it completely different to you. We've all been in that situation before. Change your perception, change your world. The famous quote by Tony Robbins. And there's an element of truth in that, because how we perceive or how we appraise a certain situation has a significant effect on our emotions, on our behavior, on our physiology. Because I could be walking down the street and a friend that I've known for many, many years could walk straight past me, and my hypothesis could be that they're ignoring me if we had a minor fallout last week. However, that might not be the case. So if I hypothesize that one is ignoring me because they've fallen out with me, then will my reaction be different if I think that perhaps they were busy or didn't see me? So my appraisal is significant in my reality. And I'll tell you that. I can come back after lunchtime and say, look guys, my friend didn't even bother to say hello. And I can get hung up on that. And as I get hung up on that, I can start getting worked up. I told you so supports the narrative. I told you so, that assumption, that was the case. I can get myself into a victim state, a negative state. Now, it may be the case that they did ignore me, and I don't have any control over that, but it may well be that your coach or therapist says, have you thought something different? Maybe, or perhaps they didn't see you. Then your whole appraisal changes. Your emotional state changes. Your behavior changes. You don't send them a narky text and say, why did you ignore me? Or you don't ignore them for the rest of your life and block them from every element of contact because you've made this hypothesis. You say, are you okay? And they might turn around and say, I am okay, I just decided to ignore you. We don't control that. But the likelihood is they may say something otherwise. And we talked about that this morning, how we tend to ruminate on certain situations. And language is a good way, a useful way, a correlative way, as we talked about other things we can do yesterday, experientially, for one to change their reality. So my reality changes, my reality's changed. So there's been redundancies at work and the boss didn't say hello to me. I could form a reality that the last time that happened, I was made redundant. Although that might not be the case, but that can impact my state emotionally, my behavior. The case might be the boss is under pressure and didn't see me, or is finding it hard to make a decision. So really, the logical thing to do, we talked about yesterday, would be to speak, communicate. So you haven't called me for a few weeks. Are you okay to speak? Not make the assumption you've fallen out. So that's a logical thing to do. But we've touched on the course, and we've talked about the brain and the evolution of the brain. We have a part of the brain that's relatively primal, that has a big impact on our decision making. Because if logic could solve every issue, then logic would have solved all the issues. But it doesn't. I mentioned yesterday that logically we know certain things aren't good for us, but we carry on doing them. People smoke, people drink excessively, people fall in love with people they shouldn't fall in love with. Logically, okay? Theoretically. But we know there's a structure of the brain at a much deeper level that has a big, big impact on behavior, which is why we talked about that. So if you're looking for communication, Milton Erickson was, first and foremost, you say the leading hypnotherapist, if not of this generation, of any generation, and Dr. Milton Erickson, who NLP people of this world will know that Richard Bandler and John Grinder had modelled Erickson's work, as well as Satir and Fritz Perls. Now, the hypnotic element in NLP, a lot of it, one could say, is based on Milton Erickson's work, and it's quite powerful. And Erickson, from a point of view of change and helping people go from maladaptive to adaptive, was quite unique in his generation in the way he would do things. He kind of reinvented the wheel at that point, going forward. I never had the privilege to meet Erickson. He'd sort of passed away by the time I came into the scene. But I've been quite fortunate of being trained and mentored by some of the best people who actually trained and learned and were mentored under him. Obviously my NLP journey, as well as my learnings in Arizona over the years with the likes of Jeff, who took on the Erickson Institute, Brent, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's really useful to get an idea of how to create experiences for people to elicit change. Because we know, okay, you can get a manual, there's plenty of books out there, and you can go step 1, step 2, but we know the brain with its 86.4 billion neurons is a bit more complicated than here's a one-size-fits-all. That's how you do this, that's how you do that. And we know we're battling amongst the elements of evolutionary, phylogenetic history where, okay, in the beginning we saw aversive behaviors amongst simple organisms that would go away or move towards, and you shine a light in the pond and the fish go one way or the other, or you clap your hands and some organisms go there, some go here. Equally in saying that, we know that some of the behaviors that we as human beings display are not always humane in one sense, and what fuels the fire, and this sort of evolutionary history of our brain from the beginning to simple reflex to the complexity, this complexity of how we speak, communicate. We have this 98% share DNA with chimpanzees, okay? There'll be people who debate the sequencing of that being different, and that's a case in point, but equally we still have that. So you've got to think, well, what differentiates us from the word? We can speak 10,000 words, a chimpanzee can speak 50, give or take. We can create these structures that we have, and planes and trains, automobiles, and chimpanzees don't do that. So The reality is there's that component of the brain that we have, that they don't have in the way we have. And because we have it in the way we have it, we can do what we do. And that's 2% different. So one could imagine a being 2% more than what we are. How fascinating that would be, how far we'd go, but that's another story for another day. So, okay, just to reiterate some key principles that are useful in creating change. I tend to find that speaking about a learning before the onset of the problem behavior is quite useful. Resourceful state. We talked about resourceful states. We talked about association, disassociation. So speak about a learning well before the onset of the problem of the behavior. So you first learn to walk. So you can invite the listener at a time where they first learn to write their name. People sometimes say learning hypnotic language is challenging, and you can say, well, there's a point that you couldn't speak at all, but you learn to speak. Go back to the first words you said, if you can remember that far back. And the point being that people say there are certain things that are challenging to do, but they've done things before. So it's always useful to ask your clients to look at early learnings and find something they've learned before the problem or the behavior they have. And if you learn to do this, you can learn to do that. If you can learn to speak English, or any other language for that matter, you can learn to speak conversational hypnosis. Okay, you could argue the brain's more malleable at 2 or 3 years of age, yet we still know the brain's malleable now. Neurogenesis, we create new neurogenesis in the hippocampi, learning, so that we know by stimulating our nervous system through experiences, through learning, through nutrition, through doing all these things. And so think of early learning. Think of a problem you have at the moment, or behaviour you'd like to change, and think about things you've learnt. If you have any doubt about you changing that, or being able to do that, or overcome a certain situation, like an exam coming up, think about past exams you've done before. If you've got something you're looking to accomplish and you have any doubts to do that, think about things you've done in the past and get into a resourceful state, inadverse to swimming in choppy waters. Because if you try and swim against the current, it's pretty tough. So we're advised, not like giving anyone any life safety advice when they're swimming, but we are generally advised not to try and swim against the current. Let it take us, and then when we get out of it, we can swim to wherever, which probably makes sense. If you're sort of sailing in a ship and you've got the sail, you're not going to really sail into strong headwind. You might sort of chop and change. We watch those boat races, they kind of tack and change, and it's the brain, and the neocortex, for me, the frontal cortex can be the navigator of the brain, the orchestra, the conductor, getting everything in order, going from there. Early learnings are useful, too. We mentioned the early learnings, and you could say, can you think back to when you first learned to swim, ride a bike, play the guitar? And that's a really useful, resourceful state to be in. Think of your early learnings: walking, talking, riding a bike, driving a car, playing guitar. Early learnings are really useful to do. We sort of reiterate from yesterday. So why do we use confusing language, which we're going to touch on shortly? Well, why do we use it? We don't do it for the sake of doing it. We do it because we want to bypass resistance, the critical factor we talked about yesterday. The state of beta, when you're really wide awake and you can challenge the status quo, so to speak. So to bypass that resistance is quite useful, and we're able to sort of navigate around the conscious mind through the back door into the depths of the unconscious mind. Because the iceberg, you see 10%, but you don't see the underneath of the iceberg. It's just confusion strategies. It's counterintuitive. So all through your life you've been told, get to the points, get with the program. It's the counterintuition of speaking in a roundabout way can be quite powerful too, because throughout your life you've been told to just, be factual. But when you're conveying facts, it would make a lot of sense to be straight to the point. one would think. Equally, you could argue if the person could have solved their problem, they would have solved already anyway. So if you convey facts to the first person, you're probably telling what they've heard before, told themselves in that narrative. So it might be an idea to change the record, put a different CD on, a new MP3 on. So people are so certain of the cause of the problem. So they're adamant. It's because my family, it's because the butcher, it's because the baker, it's because the candlestick maker. They're so adamant, they're so consumed on the problem that it's almost like a magnet. They gravitate to that. So you've got this sort of magnetic, this vortex in space where they gravitate to this issue. They're so consumed by it. They keep going there. So one way to sort of break that is to sort of cause a little bit of confusion, in the sense that we can sort of create an embryonic seed, maybe some dissonance, to plant a new tree and a new fruit, a new harvest, the plantation. So you could make the point being, so you're engaged in a really powerful conversation, and then the phone rings, and you're really consumed. You're telling your best friend over coffee and some biscuits how you were wronged by your ex-partner, how you're wronged by your ex-boss, how you're wronged by the world. You're just consumed by it. You're sort of in a rage, and then the phone rings and someone speaks to you about something on TV, they speak to you about something you've got to go later in the week, they speak to you about anything other than what you're talking about at that point in time. You go back to it and you forget. Just like you're thinking about having a cigarette and you interrupt your pattern and you think, well, actually I forgot. Or you're going to go walk to the fridge and get some chocolate or marshmallow or whatever you decide you're going to eat on a snack at a certain time in the evening, and then you sort of walk into the fridge to go get some marshmallow, ice cream or chocolate, and you just catch your eye on TV, the football, or maybe Love Island you see on TV, or maybe you see the other program on TV, a film, and you stop and watch the program and you forget. And by that point you think it's 11 o'clock now, I don't really do this now, I'm going to go to bed. So you can create confusion. It can be quite a useful way, the gateway. So Shakespeare, in Hamlet, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes us so. So our thoughts, the meaning we give to our thoughts are quite significant. But we know that we've got a logical mind and an emotional mind, and we know if the two go into a battle, who's going to win, do you think? Pretty much all the time. Will the logical mind beat the emotional mind? Very unlikely. Very unlikely. Like we said yesterday, tell yourself not to love that person, tell yourself not to eat the ice cream, tell yourself not to do the things you've always done in the way you don't want to do them anymore. There's a very good chance that that's going to come out on top more often.
Especially if you're like following your heart and not your head.
Well, precisely.
If you're that type of person.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think most people, from a scientific point of view, the part of the brain that governs what people call being their heart has much more biological effect. So the biology of one in a new relationship, for example. So one meets someone that one is really attracted to physiologically, the oxytocin that is produced in the initial instance of a relationship, the chemical reaction, that bonding chemical between mother and baby that's produced in new relationship, clouds your judgment. You see what you want to see. It's not until that starts to wear off, then you start seeing the bad habits that person has. And you'd like to hope by that point you've bonded and you're okay with that person, doing the things that you don't like them doing. But sometimes you're not, sometimes you are, and sometimes who knows. But the point being that, yeah, chemicals do blind your judgment, because everybody else is telling you for your goodwill that person's not good for you, and then you start resenting them for saying what they're saying. Well, you're just jealous, you're just angry, because that takes up as precedent, and that is a possibility. I'm sure it is, not just that instance, but in many other instances. So that chemical reaction. But two people in the same situation, different feelings about it. So two people can have the same position, and the classic one is our friend Tony Robbins, who we've talked about in the course, and love him or hate him, has had a big influence on many people, and I've been to many of his seminars over many years. The first one being as a 17-year-old, and I think his work is good. I like his work. But anyway, to sort of quote him loosely, he talks about and Tony Robbins has a lot of revivification, by the way, hypnotic revivification. It's another story for another day, but he talks about that story, for example, where he was delivered this Thanksgiving dinner, and it sort of changed his whole perception. And the dinner's his 11-year-old, I think, is the story goes. He talks about being an 11-year-old. Someone knocks on the door and delivers this sort of Thanksgiving dinner. They never had Thanksgiving dinner. A poor family, by all accounts, I don't know. But his dad rejects it, and he was really excited about the prospect of eating this sort of Thanksgiving dinner. But his dad rejects it. And, that reunification is a different perception. His dad probably sees himself as a failure for not being able to provide that. But Robert just wants to eat and get stuck in. But equally, he talks about that story, the story in one of his books, if I recall correctly. He talks about in the same family, one person goes off and becomes successful in the eyes of society, and they lived under the same roof as the other siblings, and the other one person becomes, I think, goes to jail or something along those lines. And when he interviewed both people, they said, well, how would I have done otherwise? So same conditions, same environment, but one person perceives the event as, I don't want to go there, okay? And then the other person decides, well, it's because of that, that's the causation or correlation to their life of misery. So one can see an event, does that make sense, differently? And we see that. And we talk about genes having an effect on behavior, and they do. We know neuroscientifically they do, but equally we know twins can end up different. And they have the same DNA. So they can be different in different situations. So twin studies tells us that epigenetic, the environment and the expression, can light up certain genes, like a light switch. So the quickest way from A to B, you're probably going to think, is a straight line. And I agree. I agree entirely. It'd be nice. Wouldn't it be lovely if you just had a manual and you had a one-size-fits-all approach? How wonderful would the world be as a coach and therapist, where you have this sort of book and people come in, I've got this technique for that. Or any problems you have, they could be financial problems, they could be relationship problems, they could be self-esteem issues, and you just had a book and just told you to solve the issue and you were fine. The world would be a really wonderful place. There'd be no war, no famine, we'd all be happy and so on and so forth. But the brain doesn't work that way, we've established that. So the person could have solved their issue, they wouldn't be paying money to see you. And I suppose in a way sometimes it can be condescending too, telling them what they've already told themselves a million times before. Have you not tried that? It's like the anxiety person, the person who suffers anxiety. Just relax. What's the worst thing you can say? Because they've probably heard that term a million times before. So I generally avoid the word relaxing, my anxiety patients, because they've heard it a million times before. So I tend to sort of like only use it if they've used it. I use muscle energy. Control your muscle energy, because that's something they can control and breathe. And anxiety is quite an interesting one, because it sort of hits us like a bolt in the blue. It can come through a phone, it can come through a computer, it can just come from an implicit reaction. And we've got it, and because we've got it so fast, we want to get rid of it as quick as it came, and we panic. Go away, anxiety, go. But what we can do is just sit down and breathe, like you go into a dark room. What happens? Your eyes adapt. So the environment takes a bit of time, but they adapt. But you go into the light, and you see, and you sort of come round and control your muscle energy and breathe. And so that's the key for using the language. So the Sufis say there are times we need to speak to the window so the door can hear. So simply telling someone directly what to do, it'd be easy. You'd solve it. Pretty easy. Okay? So I mentioned yesterday, sometimes we say things that we don't intend. We say things that mean something else. The analogy. The silly analogy yesterday. So you go back to your college days and you tell someone you fancy at the bar, would you like to come to my place to hear my record collection, or have a cup of tea. You mean everything but that. Well, you might mean that, I don't know, but the chances are you don't mean that. But the point being, you say one thing will mean another. Who's done that where you say one thing will mean another? And that's an indirect way of communicating to the person. It's a useful way. It's counterintuitive. It's a way to connect. We talked about metaphor, story yesterday. Deeply, it's really powerful. We speak in metaphor. It's a useful way to go to the unconscious mind. People get stuck in pattern. You interrupt the pattern and a new pattern. So I talked about the young boy who had the wetting in the bed issues. He's stuck in the pattern, and you interrupt the pattern through throwing him a felt tip and breaking that state, and then using metaphor and story around what he enjoys doing. He enjoys watching football, playing football. It so happens to be the football team he supports is a team that I work with and had their highest finish other than when they won the Premier League, and that gave us common ground. That's called utilization, which is steeped in Ericksonian hypnosis, utilization. So then we do a new pattern, and we're on the way, because an idea, association, behavior, it all starts with an idea. The idea I mentioned yesterday, a young person sees the uncle who is the cool dude, the James Dean type uncle who's cool, can never do anything wrong. He's got the cigar and cool things. Idea, smoking, association, cool, behavior, I'll smoke. Then you as a parent try and talk your teenager out of smoking, and they're not going to say, oh, you're so wonderful, mum or dad. The error of my ways. What a great suggestion. You know, they're not really going to say that. But if you start them and bring them to an emphysema ward, not that I suggest you do that, because child protection probably won't allow. But if you took them to create an experience for them, they went to emphysema ward and saw the effects. They have a new idea towards smoking, a new behaviour. So we create experiences for people, for change. We become experiential. It's a really good thing to do. Behind the behaviour is a belief. Listen to the beliefs. Listen to what they say. The cause-effect statements. Well, how come you do that? Why don't you change? Why don't you do that? It's because X, Y, Z. It's because X, Y, Z. It's this, that, and the other. And that tells you all you need to know, the narrative. The narrative is all you need to know. Disconnect that. One of the components of hypnotic phenomena is disconnection, connection. I talked about yesterday how we connect to a problem. We disconnect from a resourceful state. I talked about how when I was doing the BBC radio, Margaret, who was looking to reduce weight, one of the things she wanted to work on was go swimming again. The last time she swam at 64 years of age, 8 years of age, she was disconnected from a resourceful state. So she was connected to an unresourceful state. So the anxiety of being in the pool was piggybacking. So we take that off and then connect to a better state. And eventually she would go swimming in a short time. So we do that through discovery. We learn through discovery, through guided discovery. We learn from experiences. They're a great way to learn. We break out and see new possibilities. But language is useful because we perceive the world through our senses. Okay? We don't experience the world the way it is, the way we see the world. So let me just do a quick, before we go into the more depth, let me just do a couple of exercises with you that we're going to link afterwards and go from there. So I'm going to do a pattern bouncing off two opposites, one that I learned, and I'm going to go into more detail as we go along with one of my mentors, Jeff. I learned off him, I'll give him credit for that. So I'll give credit where credit is due. So perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. I'm going to create a bit of confusion, as one does as you do. I'm going to use aware, unaware. So unaware, aware, aware, unaware. In and out hypnosis, you can be aware when you go into hypnosis. You don't need to be aware that you were not in hypnosis. When you were now, as you're aware you are in hypnosis, you can be unaware that out of hypnosis is something that when you are aware of, later it can be an opportunity for you to really learn and make good use of it. Because your conscious mind and unconscious mind, and you have an unconscious mind and a conscious mind. And your conscious mind has ways of understanding. And the kind of conscious understandings that you unconsciously understand are different from your unconscious understanding that you consciously understand. But then, when there are misunderstandings and you consciously understand your unconscious understandings, you can unconsciously misunderstand your conscious understandings, but you can't really understand until you take an easy breath and close your eyes and begin to comfortably coincide. So, okay, perhaps in your own time, in your own pace, you come to the here and now. That was a little bit brutal. You probably wouldn't go as far as that to generate confusion, but that gives you a flavour of what's to come. That's enough to distract the mind. So if simply telling someone directly to stop doing something, they would have done already anyway. Why would they come to you for anyway? The point. We never forget that the purpose of someone seeing someone in therapy is to go from maladaptive to adaptive. Why would they go for? What's the point? They want to have a more adaptive behaviour response. So we can offer options, alternatives for ambiguity that softens rigidity, because you've got that resistance. And how ambiguous do you go? How ambiguous does one go to soften the rigidity? Well, I think the resistance is important. One thing I learned, and once again I'll credit Jeff for this, and Jeff said to me one time in a class that the level of resistance you have, so you work on proportion to the level of resistance that you encounter. So for example, I may have mentioned yesterday that if someone comes to see you and they believe in you wholeheartedly, you know, their mum, their dad, their next door neighbour, their cousin, they all came to see you and all had success, there's going to be a lot less resistance than if someone comes along and says, I've tried this and it doesn't work. It's a load of whatever. So you'd like to think that the person who's less resistant, you can be more straight on the motorway. So the person who's more resistant, you might go around the house, a story, metaphor, experiences. That's one way of looking at things. The proportion of resistance you get, you might go around. So the person who says, I've tried it all, nothing's worked, you might go around the house, tell a story to that person rather than just go straight to intervention. It might be a story. Some of the things we can use, which are quite useful linguistically, that you may pick up on. Perhaps. Why do we use the word perhaps? You've heard me say on a number of occasions, well, perhaps it's more subtle. If I say, close your eyes, how does that feel? How do you feel if I just say, close your eyes? It's very directive, isn't it? If I say perhaps, how does that feel? So it's a softener, isn't it? So in our induction and throughout the course of the intervention, we can use the word perhaps, because the person feels more in control. It's a softener, it's less intrusive than directly. Close your eyes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think, well, perhaps you'd like to close your eyes and go to an experience. And I don't know when you'll be ready, but when you're ready, you'll be ready. It's a soft invitation. So, directive, soft invitation, pause. Perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. Okay, so that's a permissive word. A presuppositional link. Before we do the presup link, think of how you would use perhaps. Think of how that would be useful in your induction, if you're doing an induction or just in general conversation. Can you think of ways that could be a softener? Yeah, think of 3 ways or 3 situations where you could use it when conversing with someone. Okay, and as you do that, lock it into the unconscious mind. Presuppositional link is quite useful too. And since you're sitting in the chair, you can close your eyes. Because you have come to see me, you're looking to improve. So something undeniable is happening, you link to a deniable. So for example, if you tell me you're going to the shop at lunchtime, I might say, since you're going to the shop, can you get me a drink? So the undeniable is you going to the shop. And I can add that. So you're more susceptible to that suggestion. So throughout the course, when I've done some of the inductions, when do I do that? When do I link the undeniable with the deniable? Well, let me give you an example. So perhaps you can close your eyes, and as you close your eyes, you can hear your heartbeat. Is that deniable? Undeniable, isn't it? You're aware of your breathing. Then what do we do after that? And as you become aware of your breathing, I'd like to think you can hear yourself breathing. You begin to feel calmer. Is that deniable? There could be. There's no rational reason that you really are feeling calm. You could deny it. So the stretch between the undeniable and the deniable, it needs to be pretty linked in. You don't want to be doing something that's sort of completely out of the... So if I said to you, perhaps you can hear your heartbeat, and that's undeniable, now you can go for a run around the block 10 times, you're probably going to resist that and say, well, actually, I don't feel anything off a run. If I say to you, perhaps you could hear your heartbeat, and as you hear your heartbeat, you begin to feel more calm. Yeah, that's within reason, isn't it? That's a really useful way to bypass resistance. Really useful way to bypass resistance. Is that okay? We sort of think of ways you could use that. So you can think of that way to bypass resistance. So you use the undeniable, and you link that to the deniable. And they're more likely to take the undeniable. They're more likely to take the deniable suggestion if you put it after a undeniable one. They're more likely to do that. And you see salespeople doing that a lot, by the way. They do it a lot, salespeople. They have the undeniable to the point, and then that's sort of deniable, and that's sort of how they kind of look to do their sales conversion, one would think. The only thing is, sometimes in the marketing world, they give you problems that you don't have, and solutions that you don't really need anyway. So you end up buying stuff from people you don't like anyway, you don't appreciate it, and so on and so on. So does that, we're okay with that? Can you think of ways you can do undeniable? So if you're writing your script, you do the undeniable, you do, perhaps you can hear yourself breathing. As you hear yourself breathing, you become aware of your heartbeat. As you become aware of your heartbeat, you take a deep breath, and you go into a state of peace. That could deny that, and if they deny that, then you just go back to the undeniable again. And that's your way of pacing, which we'll get to, pacing and leading the experience, okay? Misspeaking is a good one too. That sort of stuns the unconscious, or the conscience, I should say. So you say something and you say it in a way you wouldn't normally say it. And that can jolt. Who's ever read a paper that's got grammatical errors and it sort of jolts? Remember the thing we did the other day, the Stroop test? Okay, that's a different story for a different day. It's off the tangent, really. But the point being, you read something and it sort of jolts your conscious mind. You had that before? You get a jolt. Okay, and someone says something, then jolt's enough too to jolt the person's conscious to go to the unconscious. That's a useful way to do too. So you might throw a word in that is said in a way that you wouldn't normally say it. And we talked about Shakespeare. So Shakespeare would say things contextually we're not expected to hear, like verbing, for example. So he'd use verbing, neologism. So he'd create new words. He'd coin new words. We talked about yesterday how the word chillax, there's no such thing as a word called chillax, unless you hang around with teenagers and say, just chillax, so to speak. But we create these words, these newly coined terms, and they're quite useful too, because they trigger error-related negativity as well. Yes set as well. Okay, have you ever come across yes sets before? Anyone ever come across yes sets before? Okay. Or you have, whether you realise it consciously or not, because they're in the world around us. So yes set describes a technique by a series of university truth questions, statements limited to elicit an agreement pattern. So you go into agreement, the yes set. Can you feel your feet in the floor? Can you hear yourself breathing? Your heartbeat? Yes, yes, yes. And then what do you like to do in the momentum? The momentum carries you to the next suggestion. So, yes creates compliance. So, the next time you get a sales call, you'll notice what some salespeople do is create yes sets because they gather momentum, like a train going full speed on the track on its way to its destination, once you've got full speed and compliance, there's a better chance you're going to say yes. And they'll throw in a bind. You can pay now, you can pay later. What do they want? If they don't want to pay, it's the outcome they want. But the point being, yes, and you see it. You can do it in as a way of measuring people's learning throughout the course. It can be useful too to get compliance. You can do it to engage the learner. It's quite useful too. You'll go to seminars and you'll see people like, we bring Tony Robbins like an equation. He does a lot of it throughout the whole 2 days. He engages in a lot of yes sets. Or is it say I or whatever he's but he does it a lot, doesn't he? He does the yes set a lot. And I suppose there's his reasons for doing it. I'm sure one reason is to engage the audience and get the best out of people. Maybe this is me being cynical and not to upset his hardcore fans out there that no doubt are probably going to have a swipe at me for saying it. I like to tell things as they are. I remember one time I started to think that maybe it's strategically placed, because I took my friend one time, as I've mentioned before, and I may have mentioned to the group, I don't recall, but I'll mention it very briefly again. He wasn't a big fan, so to speak, and me liking his work, I took my friend to go see Tony Robbins one time, and he was sort of against it at first. It wasn't really his field. But, you know, his curiosity got the best of him. His wife reluctantly let him go with me on a wild Tony Robbins weekend, but he went along, and he really enjoyed it. And me being the introvert that I am, sitting in the corner, just watching observationally, he got into it. He's like getting in there. Yes, yes, yes. Say yes. Say yes. And then by the end of the close of play, when you're really tired and weary and you've got your fix, you don't want the weekend to end. You've been squirted by water guns and you've hugged everybody. The oxytocin from all the hugging, you're on a high. Man, an oxytocin from giving people a big hug. I don't like to be bear hugged by a lot of people I don't know. It doesn't release oxytocin, it releases adrenaline for me. But all the oxytocin, all the hugging, all the stuff that goes on, and you're tired, and you know when you're tired, you're like, you know, and then all of a sudden, if you love this, if you've really enjoyed this, I've got something else for you, by the way. It's the island in Fiji. Book yourself now. Do it now. Because if you do it now, you'll get it for a much better price. Don't wait. Why wait? Be a doer. Be a doer. Be a doer. You know, that evangelical to be a doer. And my friend actually got his wallet out. He's going to pay on his credit card. And it's not cheap to go on that island, by the way. And I felt a bit irresponsible. And all I could think of, when we get back and I drop him off, his wife's going to come out and come after me with a shotgun. So I said to him, I said, dude, to break the state, I'm not sure your wife will agree to this. And the wallet goes back in. He sort of put that back in there. And his wallet was, you know, his credit card was intact for that time being. But it's pretty powerful stuff, isn't it? And it goes on. And next time you watch a seminar, have a see what you think. So I always use it from a context of therapy to bypass resistance, to get compliance. You're doing it for the benefit of the person. Because the reality is, all things being equal, if you're going to use this sort of stuff, it's got to be a win-win. Because if you try and pull the wool over someone's eyes, then if it's win-lose, they're going to come back and figure it out and use a relationship. So the reality is, there's powerful patterns. You've got to think that, well, I'm using this sort of stuff. If I'm using this sort of these resources, then I'm going to use them in an ethical way, in a way that works for the person that I'm working with to help them go from A to B. Because obviously, like all things in life, things can be used for good or for bad. Because it's pretty powerful stuff, that's for sure. So it's the momentum really from the hypnotic response. Someone agreed to someone without full consideration. So salespeople, we've talked about that, do it often by asking a series of innocuous questions, of which the answer can only be yes, followed by a quick line, so you want to buy this item now. Okay, the unwary person will probably say yes without thinking about it. Okay? But from the point of view of therapy, it can be quite useful because the person can get compliant to their goal. It's their goal, that's what they want. They have a well-formed outcome. It's what they want. Okay, so other things we'll touch on before we break. Awareness predicates. Okay, indicates you have some knowledge about the topic. So you kind of relegate what's in the unconscious to the conscious. So I know. Remember, imagine, as you may have considered, however how much you explored, aware. As you're aware, So until I mention it, and you're aware of your feet on the floor, your back on the chair, you're not aware of it until I draw conscious attention to it. And this is really powerful words. I know, well, I don't know really, but I may say that I know. I know you've been thinking about the problem for a while now, and as you remember what the problem is, imagine what it would like to solve a solution. Have you considered these options? Have you explored these alternatives? As you're aware of your feet on the floor, your back on the chair, so you draw attention to the conscience. It can be useful, and we'll sort of go into these in a bit more detail because lunch is dawning upon us. The causal link, and is probably the quickest link. Okay, there's a nice sort of flow from one thing to the other thing. So, and as you begin to wonder, and imagine, so you can go from and, or just as, to and as. So, and as you feel your feet on the floor, you become aware of your breathing. As you become aware of your breathing, perhaps you notice your heartbeat. As you notice your heartbeat, can you see the flow, linkage, language? So remember simply stated facts, what's true, and what people you want to assume. So you're pacing and leading the experience. Okay? The causal links such as, while, because, to create links between words and phrases, and you'll create a smooth flow for the listener. Okay? Phonological, and we'll go into this more detail as well, ambiguity, because there are different types of ambiguity. Two words that sound the same but mean different things. Can you think of words that sound the same but mean different things? So be can mean one thing or the other. Can anyone else think of anything else that sounds the same but means something different? Red. Okay, so that creates ambiguity. Distracts the conscious mind. Did he mean this? Did he mean that? And we'll go into that in more detail after lunchtime too. This is a powerful way. So rhymes as well are good. Generate options, alternatives. I don't know whether you'd like to close your eyes or when you're ready to close your eyes. You've come here with a problem. I don't know when you'll solve it. You might find a solution when you read a paper, when you read a book. Something might spark in a dream. But what I'm hypothesizing that you're going to solve the issue. At least the client will make use of one alternative. Sounds are useful too. Words without saying anything, a bit like white noise, a bit like politicians. You don't really know what they're saying, but they're saying what they say. And that's sort of, you can sort of toe the line. You're on this fine line and you can fire off in a different direction. That's sort of one element of any of this. So, okay, I'm going down this road, but I can sort of turn off the motorway at any point and go back on the motorway. So break from the narrative. You can use noise, you can use sound, you can use gesture, a double negative, a string of negatives that have a way of making communication more complex. The person tries to make sense of that. So the mind doesn't process a negative instruction really well. Some people say it doesn't process it. It does process it, because then you wouldn't know what you had to do. So for example, you go to the gym and the person says on the rowing machine, don't bend your knees, don't bend your back. What's the first thing that goes in your mind? What they say not to do. So the mind tries to make sense of one thing or the other. What they should probably say is keep your back straight, knees straight. If I say don't think of a blue monkey, what do you think of? Not to think of. So it can be quite useful to use a double negative. I don't know whether I will or not be able to, but I'm curious to know. So the famous one was, okay, one time I read a book, I think someone had mentioned at the Ericksonian Institute, about Erickson. Someone said that they couldn't go into trance. And Milton Erickson's response was, I don't know whether or not I will be able to, but I'm curious to know how you got in the trance you're in now. So it's quite a powerful statement to make. And I covered this before when I did the exercise earlier, balancing of two opposites, like now and later, tense and relaxed. You can be tense now and relaxed later. We're going to go into this more detail after lunch. It's a really, really good pattern. I did that before with you. It's counterintuitive, enough to keep them interested, but not fire off in any direction. So you're on this straight line and you sort of navigate acuity, because people are so certain of what the issue is. We talked about it before. We can bypass and get the resistance. So before we sort of break for lunch, so the idea is that so we're going to cover the double bind statements that offer two or more choices that are in fact the same choice. So you maybe need to feel terrific now, or immediately, or make several minutes before you feel great. So what's that insinuating? You're going to feel better. We can meet Wednesday or Friday. So what's the goal? The goal is to meet. One could say it's the illusion of choice. You can pay a credit card now or pay online. So the idea is really all roads lead to sort of that. So really it's about pacing. Last couple of minutes before we break for lunch, okay, we're going to sort of look at pacing. So pacing is a simple statement that's true, all parties agree. After several paces, the mind gets in the pattern of acceptance of what is being said, and it's a perfect time to introduce a lead. Okay? So pacing experience, where the client's experience, verifiable external, is described in a way which is undeniable, followed by a cause-effect pattern, a complex equivalent, or a simple suggestion, which will go in more detail in the demonstration. So, example, during therapy, you can feel your feet against the floor, your heartbeat, you can hear your breathing. They're pace examples, they're truisms, it's factual. Okay, a lead is a statement, something that before you want to be accepted to benefit the person. They could dispute if they wanted to. You can feel your feet on the floor, you're back into the chair, you notice your breathing, and as you do that, you become more calm and at peace with the world, and so on and so forth. You need to relax, feel calm, and notice. And create a bit of a rhythm going here. Want to get a rhythm going? One of the things I do, I tend to do 3 pace statements followed by a lead, pace, pace, lead. There's not an exact science, but I tend to find that on your journey, it's useful to be really aware and have acuity of the person you're working with. And whenever they sort of get a jolt in the nervous system, you may want to bring back a pace, then a lead. So before we break the last couple of minutes for lunch, we'll do quick process and we'll pick this up after we come back. So perhaps you'd like to close your eyes, and as you close your eyes, breathe naturally, normally. As you become aware of your breathing, perhaps you notice your heartbeat, and as you notice your heartbeat, you begin to feel and notice the warmth of the sunshine coming through the window. And perhaps you can hear the ticking clock in the background. And as you hear that ticking clock in the background, it reminds you of a time when you had nowhere you had to be or nothing you had to do. It was your time. And as you become aware of this time where there was nowhere you had to be or nothing you had to do, you begin to feel calm. And time, it could be like waiting for a bus, a train, or a friend to pick you up, and you're in no rush. A friend's coming to pick you up and you're having a cup of coffee or tea and just watching something on TV. And as you watch that thing on TV, you feel calm. And your friend arrives and it feels like time is distorted. And you get in the car or on the train or in the plane, and time just feels like a open phenomenon. You're in that moment. And you can put all the things that are in your mind to one side, or put them outside, or put them to the other side. And you can carry on your journey. And as you carry on this journey, you feel a sense of peace, calm, and wonder to all the infinite possibilities in the world. A sense of wonder, a bit like a baby, when the baby looks at the baby's hand, and the baby looks one way, and the baby looks another way. And the baby starts to realise it's a separate entity. And when the baby realises that it's separate to the mum, it feels a sense of, a bit like when we put our toe in the water on a nice summer's day, in the pool or in the beach, walking on the sand. The water looks so warm and inviting. However, the body temperature adjusts. And you put your toe in the water and you splash your leg in the water. and it feels warm. And as you make your way into the ocean or into the pool or into the bath, you feel a sense of warmth run through your body from the tips of your toes, to your calves, to your thighs, to your lower back, to your tummy, to your chest, to your arms, to your fingers, to your neck, to your head, to your eyes. You feel really deep at peace, in that state of peace and tranquility. A sense of wonder. And perhaps you go back to a time when you felt calm. Perhaps you go back to a time when you felt resourceful. Perhaps you go back to a time when you felt focused. It doesn't really matter where you go back. We can go back wherever you want to go back, and it can be a vacation, a holiday, or just a family gathering. You feel safe and secure. Just have a moment to be in the moment, because when we're in the moment, we feel in the moment. And the Buddhist philosophy, or at least my interpretation of the Buddhist philosophy, is that the past is the illusion, the future is the illusion, the only one we have now. And you might be very goal-orientated and think, well, if I live in the now, I won't achieve my goals. But the best chance you've got of achieving your goals are living in the now. And all that you want to feel better anyway. So imagine the feeling of having whatever goal you want, and you're in a better position to achieving the goal. And you become psychoanalytic about the past, and you can paralysis by analysis and think too much. And you can let go of the heirloom that floats. Because perhaps you've picked up the baton that's been passed from generation upon generation. Perhaps you can just get the baton and put it to one side. And you notice in the background a small, warm, cozy fire burning. And what you can do, if you want to do, it's entirely up to you, is imagine just putting all your fears and limiting beliefs and all the things that are getting in the way of you getting from A to B, or where you want to go, or living the way you want to live, and put them in that fire, let them burn, and disintegrate into the atmosphere. And the smoke blows in the atmosphere, just like a bonfire night, and evaporates in the midnight sky. And then you see a sense of proportion of how big your problems are in proportion to the universe. The vast universe. The Hubble Deep Experiment, where they shine the most powerful telescope into the midnight sky, and we're humbled by the cosmic vastness of the universe. The Earth, this small dot in the horizon, a pale blue dot, and you can focus on that pale blue dot in the cosmic universe and realize that in a million years from now, in a billion years from now, anything you had in your mind will just be a figment of imagination, gone. And with that realization, you feel a sense of trepidation, but you also feel a sense of liberation. And the weight is off your shoulders, and you feel you can live and go with the flow, sailing down the canal. Just decide which town you want to stop and explore. And you can stop at a town and explore all the wonders and all the richness, all the texture, like a new experience, and the wonder of a child, a new experience. Some of you had an experience, excitement, and that excitement transcends itself into every part of the body, and you feel a lease of life, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's a new day, it's a new dawn, a new beginning. It feels wonderful to let go, knowing that every situation you experienced in the past was there for a learning experience. You grew and became the person you are. It wouldn't be who you are if you didn't experience what you experienced. And you can let go what you can't control, and control what you can't control, and live in their richness and beauty. And as you do that, you need some time to enjoy this wonderful experience, knowing you're in complete control of what you do moving forward. And think about what you want. And as you think about you want, think about how you'll go about achieving what you want. And as you think about how you go about achieving what you want, imagine starting from a place of having it, where you'll see, what you'll hear, what you'll feel when you've got what you're aiming for, shooting in the midnight star. It doesn't matter how, just think of like having it. And every 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step. And you can take that first step, and like a sailing boat in the ocean, you can navigate against the winds. And you can cruise on a plane and get excited about the destination. When you arrive, what you'll see, what it'll be like. Put everything behind and enjoy the experience. And just breathe naturally and normally. And when you're on a journey, it's not about getting to the top of the mountain, the exhilaration of seeing the beauty. It's also about making your journey on the mountain. The stops you make, the friends you make, the experiences you take. And as you make your journey, you need some time to reflect and think about how you're going to go about getting there. And just really enjoy the moment. And in your own time, in your own pace. Just like you've solved things in the past, you'll solve whatever is on your mind. And perhaps you'll solve it today, perhaps you'll solve it tomorrow, perhaps you don't need to solve it, perhaps you'll solve it when you have a dream, perhaps you'll solve it when you read a book, perhaps you'll solve it because it doesn't need to be solved. It doesn't need to be solved. It's like most of our worries, they never materialize anyway. And just breathe and have a moment to pause and just enjoy the experience.